MLB first base musical chairs, rumors about the Dodgers, and what's happening there in St. Louis. That and more ahead at the Upside. Good evening. Welcome in, everybody, for a late night edition of MLB Hot Stove Daily here at the Upside Sports Network. Appreciate you guys joining us. It's a little after 10:30 Central Time anyway, but I wanted to kind of have some fun with you guys tonight and just go over some things that we haven't really touched on too much. But first, we'll start with some of the news items today. For those of you who may have missed our earlier live, Major League Baseball has seen a ton of first basemen get moved over the last 24 hours. First, we'll start with Paul Goldschmidt going back to the New York Yankees. Going to the New York Yankees anyway. 1 year, $12.5 million deal. Good deal here for the Yankees because it's not exactly the huge cost that they were necessarily expecting there at first base. Remember, Christian Walker just got 3 years, $60 million from the Houston Astros the day before. We saw a trade today as well. Naylor goes from the Guardians to the Diamondbacks in exchange for a young prospect and a pick. Good deal for them because then they turn around and bring back Carlos Santana. Yes, the same Carlos Santana who was with the Indians all those years ago. He's never played with the quote-unquote Guardians. This will be his first stint with them since their team has changed the name. But good get for them. Why? Because they get the young guys that they got in the Naylor trade. Really good value there, long-term value there, while they still keep a very similar value for what Naylor was going to give them. So really like the deal for the Guardians. We'll see what other moves they may have surprises or have in store for us that are surprises. But they've been a nice surprising team this offseason. Every now and again, we get an out-of-nowhere trade, and we saw one earlier in the offseason with Jimenez going to Toronto. Now we see one after, I tell you guys, a day before. Naylor's probably not going anywhere because there's not that impact bat that's going to change their fortunes and try to win the 2025 World Series. The next day they go out and say, the heck with it. We'll do what the Guardians have always done and turn an depreciating asset into multiple future strong assets. So really good asset management there by the Guardians. The other bit of news anyway is that Rickey Henderson passed away at 65 years old. All-time base stealer, greatest leadoff hitter ever in Major League Baseball history. One of the highest energy people I have ever seen. Just on the field, off the field, the way he could talk. He was never a boring guy. He was never one to just sit back and relax and take it easy. That was not in his vocabulary. Ricky was go, go, go. And in a day and age where a lot of people are more hesitant to act, hesitant to steal bases in baseball, hesitant to take that leadoff role and run with it, Ricky was one of a kind, both on the field and off, and he will be missed. So that's kind of where we're going to start today anyway. First base, he had a lot of movement anyway. But of course, Ricky Henderson kind of dominated the news cycle. 65 years young, still too early to go, honestly, and he will be missed. Welcome in, Mark. Welcome in, VPCZX. Appreciate you joining us once again. Do you use Fangraphs for stats and contracts? Occasionally. I kind of use a bunch of different sources for both. Contracts, I use pretty much a combination of like 3 different sites. As far as stats, I use literally anybody. Roster Resource, Fangraphs. I use, just the traditional stats from, ESPN, MLB.com, all kinds of different places. But I don't necessarily, hold fast to, one site over another. But I have, in the past, used Fangraphs from time to time. But appreciate you guys joining us. Got about 35 of you guys with us already. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe, would go a long way to helping us out. We've gained quite a few subscribers over the last 24 hours. I think we've gained up to... Let me see here. We've gained 27 subscribers now over the last 24 hours. Thank you guys for joining us. Really does help us out. We're trying to get to 2,000 before the end of the year. Let's see if we can finish this year strong. Ever since the winter meetings happened, we've gained almost 300 subscribers. Y'all are amazing. Thank you guys for supporting us. And if you guys want to support the channel, follow us over on X at UpsideSN, Facebook Upside Sports Network. Willard, welcome back. Look, Astros might surprise people because I'm hearing rumors Astros might sign Baltimore free agent Anthony Santander and try to trade for Roberts Jr. Since his trade value is low. There's a lot of teams that at least kick the tires on Robert. I won't deny that one. I kind of talked about Santander being a good option for them to kind of pivot after losing Kyle Tucker in that trade. They need to bring in somebody to help out offensively in that outfield. I think they will get somebody. The question is, how much are they willing to spend on that person? And I think Santander probably goes to the high bidder. If the Astros are that high bidder, I think his contract's probably 5 years. That's comfortable for the Astros. If it turns out to be $20 million, I think that's right in the budget for what the Astros could really afford. So we'll see if he goes there. So not too far off the mark on the Santander mark there. Chicago Bears, welcome back. What happened with Ricky? I haven't heard too many news as far as like what it actually was, but let me see if I can pull it up for you guys. Let me pull over to my page for you guys. We'll go ahead and load that page first. Let's see here. Doesn't say anything in this article anyway as to what was the cause, but to me it doesn't really matter at this point what the cause was. But 65 years old, just sad to see him go. Really enjoyed his candor in all of his interviews. He was probably one of the most least politically correct people you'd ever come across. He says what he's thinking. He'll tell you what he feels about you. He's not going to sugarcoat anything. And in a day and age where that's what all you hear nowadays, really refreshing to see somebody that honest and that convicted in his beliefs to be who he is. Let Ricky be Ricky. Just sad to see a man go that way, go that young anyway. All right, Tim, welcome back. Will the Mets re-sign Alonso to a 10-year, $270 million contract? Not a chance, Tim. It's not going to go to 10 years, that's for certain. $270 million is also out of the question. I think we're probably looking at a 5-6 year deal at this point for Alonso. I think we're looking very similar numbers here to Freddie Freeman, maybe a little over, maybe a little under. I hear reports now with the signings that we saw today that Alonso's market has really dried up, and so his leverage is gone essentially in his negotiations with the Mets. Those teams have already made their decision as what they're going to do. The only other real option on the free agent market is guys like Josh Bell, Anthony Rizzo. On the trade market, Yandy Diaz, Ryan Mountcastle, Nathaniel Lowe. And off of a so-so year, Alonso doesn't actually have a great platform from which to say, hey, pay me $30+ million or I go here, or here. We were hearing reports earlier this offseason that he was probably going to get between 5 for 125, 5 for 135. That was my projection as well. And then now we're getting reports from Ken Rosenthal a week ago that said his negotiations were getting into the 6-year mark. That's fine, for around $180 million. That's a nice step up for him. And with the markets drying up with the Yankees specifically, I think that's going to drive his price down. Pete Alonso might take a little bit now to sign because I think he wants to get the number, and I think he's going to be stuck waiting for a team that offers it to him. He's got the power, don't get me wrong. Probably one of the best power hitters in the game, best pure power hitters in the game. But he doesn't translate that to contact. He doesn't translate that to avoiding double plays. He is basically, all about the long ball, and that has a place in the game. There are still teams out there that need to have players like that in their lineup, but are they willing to pay an aging first baseman for that skill set? We've seen over the last 5, 6, 7 years now, the only real first baseman that have been signed at any legitimate contracts, we're talking about Freddie Freeman, we're talking about Matt Olson. I'm sure I'm missing one or two, but that's about it. You don't really see a contract like Albert Pujols or Prince Fielder anymore. I'm sure Pete Alonso was hoping he would get to that point, but he's not there. Vlad Guerrero is probably the guy that's going to get to that point. He's a better hitter overall, and has a little bit more defensive ability at first base and versatility because he can play third as well. Guerrero's going to do great in free agency, but as far as Alonso, 10 years completely out of the question. 270 also out of the question. I think we're looking somewhere in between 5 for 2 or for 125 million versus 6 for 180 million. So we'll see. Hank, welcome back. Greatest ever. He was the greatest. Let's see. Robert would be great for the Astros. I would agree with that one. I think he would be a great fit. The question is, how would the money fit long term? This would be another, contract that'd be a little bit pricey for them to take on without much impact for them on the field for the bang for the buck. So, for instance, I think Santander, for the length of the deal, would actually be a better fit for them. They have so many contracts coming off the books over the next few years that they need some long-term answers at some of those positions. Otherwise, you look at Bregman, eventually just aged himself out of the system there in Houston. He's not going to sign back there unless he takes a deep discount on his contract. So if he just absolutely loves it in Houston and wants to stay there, he's going to sacrifice significantly more than most other free agents would to go back there. We look at the Toronto Blue Jays with two guys that are going to hit free agency next year, and this is kind of the case I'm making here for Houston, is that Toronto doesn't exactly have a great future after this 2025 season. Because Vladdy could leave, Bichette could leave, and then you're left with George Springer, a bag of balls, 1 year left of Grossman, and Barrios. You don't really have much to hang your hat on. And so for Houston, to get the trade done for Tucker was great for them, gave them some future pieces that they can use, but they still have more work to do. And I think they need to get a couple of long-term deals done. So something like Santander should at least increase their ability to maintain a certain floor, a certain level of expectation for where they should finish each year. Whereas the Blue Jays, they could finish in a tough spot. So, by the trade deadline, they could be looking to move on from Vladdy. They could be looking to move on from Bo Bichette, but we'll see what happens. Let's see here. I heard it was pneumonia, but not sure. Possible. One hell of a player. Yes, he was, and very fast. Flat Earth. Welcome back, Flat Earth. Astros have nothing in their farm system to give up for Roberts except Ken Smith, who they just picked up. The Astros farm system is pretty darn bare. I will say that. So I don't think the Astros should necessarily be trading from that. I think they should be trying to build it up and just try to get in a few pieces like they just did with using one of their expiring contracts in Tucker to, kind of get some long-term pieces on that roster while still keeping some good production in there with Paredes. Then they bring in Christian Walker via free agency, so it'd be great to see that happen. Welcome in VPCZX. Rest in peace to the Stolen Base King. Absolutely. Michael, Mets getting Bregman and Alonso actually realistic, or is this wishful thinking? For right now, I would say that's firmly in the category of wishful thinking for Mets fans. Sorry, they've got too many applications open, I guess. All right. Let's see here. But as far as the realistic versus wishful thinking, I think Alonso is very realistic. Bregman, to me, you look at what Carlos Correa did for them, say, a couple of years ago when they were trying to bring him in. The only reason they didn't get that deal done was because the medicals essentially didn't come back good enough for them to be willing to do that long-term deal. They were willing to spend the money on it, and Cohen's shown the ability to go out there and spend big money when they don't necessarily have to. And the move at the time was thought to be kind of a trump card move whenever they went for Correa. Ultimately, it didn't work out. I would picture the same thing here with Bregman. There's no injury concerns with Bregman, however. He's been nothing but a very consistent performer. But now, I would say in the marketplace, he's a little bit undervalued for him being on the market this long. I thought he would have been scooped up by now. We're talking about a player who's never been out of a postseason. He's always made it to the ALCS because he's been a part of that Houston Astros team. Leadership abilities galore. Now, he hasn't been able to reach the ceiling yet. You got to wish and a hope that he hits that ceiling, sure. But at the very least, you're getting a very competent defensive player who can play short or third base. I think he's going to be great at either one. You have Lindor already. If the Mets were somehow able to land Alex Bregman and Pete Alonso, I mean, they still need to address their rotation. Say they bring back Sean Manaea, probably one of the best off seasons in history we've ever seen. I mean, Texas, when they got Simeon and Seager, really changed the trajectory of their franchise. One of the greatest off seasons we've ever seen as well. Of course, Shohei Ohtani's free agency, Judge just going back to the Yankees was also great. But this would be different in the fact that they're recruiting outside talent to really take them over the top. Now, we've seen other teams do this in the past with one or two guys. But the Mets were just in the NLCS, and they're adding all of these significant pieces. You got to get them on there, make a team out of it. But they have all the pieces in place if they were to do something like that. Just be a great lineup, a great rotation that they could still add to at the deadline if they wanted to. And, by the way, they had rebuilt their farm system with the trades they had made because of the money of Cohen. So when you have a team like the Mets, you can't count them out of anything. So I would still say it's in the realm of wishful thinking to get both, but I would say Alonso's far more realistic. I strongly think the Blue Jays should trade for Jesus Luzardo. I would be very cautious when I come to Luzardo, primarily because, I mean, the medicals came back negative, at least from what we're hearing, when he was almost traded to the Cubs a couple of days ago. That's a problem. If I'm the Marlins, sure, I would like to get something of high quality back in return for him. Right now, he's coming off of a 6 ERA season, a season where he was injured. You're hoping he would have a better first half this year, and maybe at the trade deadline you could get some legitimate pieces for him. But if you're expecting a premium return for him coming off of that season, I'm sorry, I just wouldn't give you the pieces. Luzardo would have to show me that he's back and healthy and good to go before I'd be willing to give you any of my top prospects. Not even just top 5, top 10. We're talking top 20. And I think the Marlins are looking for a better return than an outside the top 20 draft, or outside the top 20 prospects from one team. I mean, Luzardo's got the talent to be an ace on the staff. He's never been able to stay healthy or consistent in his delivery. That's why he's never reached that potential yet, but you never know. You may catch lightning in a bottle, and I'm sure the Marlins, when they acquired him, were hoping to get better pieces in return. Let's see here. Let me close that one. Okay. Sorry about that. My computer's starting to run a little strong on memory at the moment, but we're back. Let's see here. Butchered the last name. No, you just fine. All right, so I did want to check in on a few other things with you guys. So one thing when we left you guys earlier today was there was some news coming out of the Dodgers that they were interested in Seiyu Suzuki. Those have been confirmed by a few different sources now, but it sounds to me like they're still being a little bit penny pinching when it comes to Teoscar Hernandez. They're looking at other options, and for me, for the money you would give for Suzuki, why are we talking about this when you just had a great season from Teoscar Hernandez? I mean, you'd have to give up pieces in return. Maybe the Cubs would eat some of that money for you and make it a little bit more palatable, but what are we really quibbling about here? Teoscar Hernandez's ask at the beginning of the offseason was around $28 million a year for 3 years. His ask has come down. Right now, the market seems to be between $22 and $24 million per season. Say that over 3 years is between, $64 and $70 million? That isn't out of the wheelhouse for the Dodgers to be able to afford. And they just gave Michael Conforto 1 year at $17 million. Now, say they go after Suzuki. You're going to be spending, $25, $30 million on that position. why wouldn't you just go out and get the piece that you had so much success with last year, unless there's something wrong? We haven't heard anything to that effect, so it tells me that we're starting to be a little bit more cautious with the way we're spending our money. They have no reason to be. They're literally swimming in money. I don't see the reason for the hesitation here, unless there's something that they're worried about with the bat of Teoscar Hernandez. He was one of the few players that Shohei Ohtani actually connected with on that staff, or on that team anyway, last year, outside of Yamamoto. If I'm the Dodgers, I would be moving heaven and earth to make sure my star player is comfortable and not just trade away or get rid of one of his best teammates on the club. So I'd be looking for them to try to bring him back. But other names they've been connected to, let me get this pulled up here for you guys. Let me go back just one page, I believe. Suzuki, Kim, and Robert. We already talked a little bit about Robert, but Ha-Seong Kim is kind of a shortstop, second baseman, third baseman extraordinaire, more of a glove than anything else. But he could be moved in an outfield situation if you had to. I still think they're going to go for a right-handed hitting outfielder more than anything else. But to me, I would still be leaning towards Teoscar Hernandez. In case you guys just missed it, the other headline that we got from Mark Feinsand is that Ryan Helsley has been asked about by the Blue Jays and Diamondbacks. We kind of expected Helsley to be moved at some point this offseason. Here's in the article you can see here of the Arizona radio network on 97.2 says the Cardinals do not appear to be willing to trade Helsley. What a shock! They don't necessarily want to give him away. But we're talking about a premium asset that has had poor performance and injuries in his past. You're going to have more of a limited market when you try to trade him at the deadline, so I would expect more interest to peak up around Ryan Helsley over the next few weeks. Remember, the relief market is pretty strong this year. You just saw the trade for Devin Williams. We still have Tanner Scott out there in free agency, along with Kirby Yates, Kenley Jansen as well. On the trade market, you have Ryan Presley from Houston, Ryan Helsley here from the Cardinals, and a few others as well. There is a bevy of relief arms to go around. We'll see who ultimately gets them, but a team that needs a closer should definitely be looking at Ryan Helsley and saying, hey, what would it take to get him? Now, one guy that we've been kind of mentioning over the last couple of videos anyway is Mason Miller. Update for you guys on the Philadelphia Phillies and Alec Bohm. There were some reports that I saw over the last couple of days that Bohm had been connected with the A's, that he'd been connected with the Mariners. Well, we knew that the Mariners' talks were centered around Luis Castillo. There was no real traction there ever since that rumor came out. However, the rumors with the A's do have some legs. The A's have legitimate interest in bringing in Alec Bohm. However, the ask from the Phillies was Mason Miller. In case you guys are wondering, Miller's value is about double that of Alec Bohm. Tells you how high of a price the Phillies right now have on Alec Bohm. Miller is, of course, a reliever. Does have a really inflated value because of how good he was last year. But remember, he missed the second half of the year, essentially, because he punched a wall and broke his hand. Not exactly the smartest decision in the world. However, he does have tremendous value, and I can understand why the A's balked at that price. You're not exactly getting comparable value. We also mentioned over the last couple of days how maybe the Texas Rangers could be a mystery team here for Corbin Burns. Say they get the deal done, they're going to have to offload some contracts in order to get this thing across the finish line. The A's, would be a great place for them to go to try to get a low-cost reliever. One piece that I was looking at there is Mason Miller would go to Texas in exchange for probably, Bradford was one arm that I had going that way. Smith I had going that way as well, and possibly John Gray. If that deal were to be rounded out with Alec Bohm, that would be a nice trade for the A's. The Rangers would be getting what they would need. However, the compensation for the Phillies gets a little bit more abstract. Would they want prospects? Would they want a reliever at the back end of their bullpen? Because outside of Miller, the Rangers don't have one. The A's don't have one. And unless they're giving up premium assets to go to Philadelphia that they could then reroute to fill that third base void, or if they already had a deal worked out with Alex Bregman, possibly trade for Nolan Arenado, all of those are, the cards that are on the table right now. And while Mason Miller's value is really high, the A's definitely were not willing to do just a one-for-one deal with Bohm. So as good as Miller is, you're not just going to give him away if you're Oakland. So I understand the hesitation there. We'll see if they end up moving him. I think there's a chance they could if they can get some controllable starting pitching and a controllable bat in Bohm. Bohm has 2 years left on his deal. I mentioned kind of that 3-team deal. I haven't completely worked out all the kinks yet, but Bradford has 5 years left on his deal, roughly a $20 million value right now on the market. Bohm has 25. That gets you darn close to Miller's value already. I think Leiter pushes it darn close, if not equal to that limit already. And then you'd still have to work out the Phillies piece of it, but we'll see what happens. Robert, welcome back. Welcome in. I remember when Ricky was caught stealing off of Ryan and Pudge. They got him good. That says so much because Ricky was just so fast. Rest in peace, Ricky. Pudge and Ryan were pretty darn good at it. I will put it that way. That was towards the end of Ricky's career anyway. It was, he was probably one of the fastest players I've ever seen. Watched a lot of video on him over the years, and there's never been a player like him. Just to give you guys context for where he ranks as far as stolen bases, the leading stolen base getter in all of Major League Baseball, the active leader, is Starling Marte at like 380 something and change. If Starling Marte had added another 50 stolen bases for every single year he was in the majors, he would still be 200 behind Ricky. That's how far out in front it is, and we see how Marte's wheels have really fallen off. Ricky was just that good, and he will be missed. Cobra, welcome back. Padres have a new owner, kind of. Yes, Seidler is now in charge anyway. We'll see if that changes their dynamics. I was looking at their contracts this year, and it kind of hit me how many of 1-year deals they have left on their roster. Cease is entering the final year of his deal. King is entering the final year of his, and Luis Arraez. And so we hear a couple of rumors coming out of San Diego that they may be looking to recoup some value for 1 or 2 of those guys. Cease is one of the guys that's been mentioned quite a bit, as well as Luis Arraez. And I think there's a legitimate chance we could see a deal with either one of those guys before spring training. Dylan Cease, value around $25-30 million on the open market. A team that needs an ace, I think, would go after him. I was looking at his numbers, though. Outside of that 1 year where he had a 2.2 ERA, he's had 1 season with an ERA under 4. That would worry me if I'm looking to spend a long-term commitment on Dylan Cease. Now, remember, he's only got 1 year left on his deal. He's going to be hitting free agency after this year. If he has a great platform year, so be it. You cough up the money. But you also have to be willing to cough up the prospects now and be willing to lose them if he signs somewhere else in free agency. So I do think if San Diego's going to trade somebody, they're going to trade Dylan Cease. For me, I think the Orioles, they just seem to keep going for this pattern, so I'm going to go ahead and pick them to ultimately win the Dylan Cease sweepstakes. And as far as the rest of the guys that I just mentioned, Michael King and Luis Arraez, I think there's a legitimate chance Luis Arraez could be on the move at some point. He doesn't give them an overwhelming advantage at any point right now. You look at the on-base percentages that he has, that's great. But the contact rate is great as well, but the power isn't there. The average isn't quite as good as it used to be. 1 year left on his deal, and he's making $15 million. You can recoup some of the value in Arraez by making a trade and getting a longer-term contract back. For instance, say Texas wanted to get a little bit better with contact rate, and they just wanted to move off of Nathaniel Lowe. They could trade Lowe there. I think Lowe has a little bit more value. Bring in Arraez, even though it's 1 year left, and then maybe a prospect to kind of round out the deal. Then the Padres would have their everyday first baseman in Nathaniel Lowe, and it would be a good all-around option, I do believe. So there is a few options out there for the Padres to tinker with their roster. Do not be surprised if we see some out-of-nowhere trades over the next month coming from San Diego. And I'm not talking about just one trade with Dylan Cease. I'm talking about 2 because they have some big-time contracts they're going to have to consider for King, Arraez, and Cease. They're not going to sign all 3. I doubt they sign 2 of those guys, and I think they're going to try to recoup as much value as they possibly can. JRP, welcome back. Any news on the Mariners? Haven't heard too much today anyway, but I still hear them in pretty much every single bat that's out there. One that we kind of addressed the other night anyway was Mountcastle going the other way in exchange for Luis Castillo. I don't necessarily love that trade, but I love it for Baltimore. I think the Mariners would have to do a little bit of soul searching and see if Mountcastle is enough of a piece for them to dismantle their greatest rotation in franchise history, or if they'd rather go the free agency route and just try to piece it together once again, on the fly. I don't think either option is particularly great, but when you're restricted to a $15 million self-imposed budget by your ownership group, you got to work with what you got. So we'll see what they do, but the Mariners, I think, are still looking for offense. I think they're just trying to do it without losing their pitching that they worked so hard to finally get. Cobra, Henderson got his 3K hit as a Padre. A lot of good memories of Henderson for a lot of different fan bases out there. So a lot of remembrances we've seen come in on X today. Welcome in, Michael Z. Anything on Burns, Manage? I'm guessing Manaea and Buehler at all? Yes, you do mean Manaea. Okay. Burns is still the favorite to go to the San Francisco Giants. I kept telling you guys it was 75%, now it's 70, now 65, now 50. I told you guys yesterday I was down to about 45% sure he was going to go to San Francisco. I'm going to stay at that number today. But it seems like the other teams that we knew were in the hunt here, the Red Sox have moved on with the addition of Sandoval. The Blue Jays see the writing on the wall that he doesn't necessarily want to go there, so they're pivoting to Nick Pivetta. I'm sure they have the high offer already on the table to Burns, and he hasn't bid at it. Tells me he's not going to go there. Tells me that the San Francisco Giants either A, don't have enough or aren't high enough of an offer for him to sign right now, or B, that the mystery team that we keep hearing in on Burns is where he really wants to go, and they're trying to figure out either A, how to free up some money, or B, how to free up some spots on that staff. So that's kind of the more intriguing option. One team that we've heard anyway was the Texas Rangers. Another one would be the Baltimore Orioles. I would love for the Orioles to bring him back. I just don't think it's going to happen. Let's see here. As far as Manaea, I still think he's a favorite to go back to the Mets. Orioles have been connected. Blue Jays to a certain extent. Rangers were earlier in the offseason. And the Atlanta Braves have at least kicked the tires on him as well. Buehler, if I had to guess, probably ends up with the Chicago Cubs because a guaranteed spot in the rotation is better than anywhere else for him. Giving him innings is exactly what that guy needs. He doesn't need to be skipped every now and again. He needs to get some pitches, needs to be able to throw and show that he's back being the healthy Walker Buehler we knew. Being in a competitive environment, I think he actually pitches better. So I think he needs to be in a rotation that's going to be competing for at least a division, if not a World Series. If he's not going to be in that, I think he's going to struggle to have some success. So his motor really gets going in those high-pressure situations. He's always looking to take the ball. We saw that when Scherzer was unable to pitch all those years ago with the Dodgers. It was Buehler that came up and said, no, I got it. Now, of course, the game didn't go their way, but you saw the aggressiveness that Buehler had back then. Injuries, unfortunately, derailed him at this point. But I think he goes to Chicago. The Braves have been connected with him. A number of other teams have as well. But if I had to pick a team right now, I would say Buehler goes to the Cubs. Welcome back, D-Rod. Got about 50 of you guys with us right now. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. If you wouldn't mind subscribing, we're trying to reach 2,000 by the end of the year. We're getting very, very close to it if you wouldn't mind helping us out. But D-Rod, who plays first base if the Rangers trade low? I think it could be a couple of different options. One, if they trade low, they could go the in-house route. Berger being the right-handed platoon option, the left-handed being Josh Smith. They could bring in an outside guy via trade. Yandy Diaz comes to mind. They could go free agency for a platoon guy like Anthony Rizzo. That wouldn't be horrible. But right now, I would say, barring a big-time addition like Corbin Burns, I think Lowe stays at first base. Maybe they make a trade for Luis Arraez and Dylan Cease. Maybe bring both of those guys over. That'd be a great stack. I don't know how the Rangers would swing that one, but I'd imagine they'd have to include some serious talent going back to San Diego to swing it. But I wouldn't consider that one completely out of the realm of possibility. Cobra, Arraez for Arenado. Arenado said he's willing to play first base. That's tempting there, Cobra. That's very tempting. I just don't think it'd be a one-for-one trade. I think there'd have to be prospects on either side, but it's not a horrible idea, but there's no reason why the Cardinals would want Arraez back. 1 year left. They're going through a rebuild process. There's no reason for them to try to do something like that. Now, if it's a 3-team deal where you send Arraez somewhere else and Arenado comes in, that would make more sense, but who would take Arraez is the question. JRP, let's see here. What's going on with Santander? Still pretty much just trying to take the highest bidder. He's trying to wait out his market a little bit here. If I had to guess, we would have Burns and Bregman still signed before Santander. I think he wants to get the biggest contract he can, and he's going to wait for these teams that are desperate after missing on those guys to turn to him and say, hey, here's an extra $2, $3, $4 million a year. We need somebody to hang our offseason on and say, hey, look at our shiny new object. And I think the Blue Jays might very well be that team, either that or the Houston Astros. If I had to handicap it right now, if I was Santander, I would choose Houston. If I'm looking at Santander's wallet, I might say Toronto. Sean, welcome back. Welcome back. Someone needs to sign Rizzo. I think he's going to sign somewhere. It's just a matter of, does he go back to the Cubs and kind of a farewell tour kind of a thing and just hang it up after this year? Or does he still want to compete? I think a team like the Giants would be looking for a first baseman. I know the Rangers will be if they move off of Nathaniel Lowe. There's a few other teams that could use a first baseman that are out there. And then, of course, you still have the trade targets as well. But I think Rizzo still has a little bit left in the tank. How much remains to be seen. Welcome back, Lucas. Appreciate you joining us once again. Almost 11:20 Central Time. Appreciate you guys taking the time and joining us late this evening and enjoying some baseball talk with us. If you guys wouldn't mind hitting that like and subscribe if you haven't already. Follow us over on X at UpsideSN and on Facebook at Upside Sports Network. Rizzo back to the Padres. That would be a good one if they moved off of Arise. Let's see here. D-Rod, Alonso running out of options. Maybe Seattle, San Francisco, but he's probably going back to the Mets, hat in hand. Ooh, that's a little bit of a shot there, D-Rod, but I get your point. To me, Seattle can't afford him. They just can't, period. As much as they've flirted with him in the past, they just simply can't afford him. As much as the fan base would love to have him, they can't afford him. San Francisco would be a better bet, but of course they have the prospect coming in a year or so. So are they really willing to tie up their DH spot for 4 or 5 years after this and just, give it to Pete Alonso? There's no guarantee he hits as many out there in Petco Park versus, being in New York. So New York worked really well for him. I think he ultimately ends up back to the Mets. Hat in hand, I think, is a little strong, but he might not get the full 180 that he was originally being rumored for from Ken Rosenthal. Might be something a little closer to what Freddie Freeman ultimately got. Do you like the moves the Yankees made since losing Soto? Yes. Honestly, I think it's a win of a postseason, or a win of the offseason already for the Yankees. I mean, sure, you lose your second best player offensively, but I would argue they're a better overall team. They're not going to be an offense-focused team with Judge and Soto at the top and pretty much players around them. They were still led offensively with those two guys. Now, they're still going to have Aaron Judge, but their offense, I think, is better all around. They're going to have better than players to me because Bellinger, I think, is a better piece than what they had to work with already. I love the addition of Goldschmidt here at first base, and I still think they're going to add somebody at third. Whether that's Arenado or Bregman remains to be seen. If they get Bregman, chef's kiss, just great offseason. But they brought in Max Fried. They brought in Devin Williams. I think they're still going to add another reliever as well. They might move on from Stroman and then add another starting pitcher to the back of that rotation. All of these options are not out of the realm of possibility, and I'm already giving it a win of an offseason for them. I'm not saying it's the great offseason by any stretch, but I'm saying you take the second best player off of your team. He gets the greatest contract in professional sports history. Not baseball history, but professional sports history. And you turn around 8 years, 2 of 18 for free. You bring in Devin Williams. You trade for Cody Bellinger. You tried for Kyle Tucker. Now you bring in Paul Goldschmidt, and you still have more to do, and you're going to get it done, I do believe, at third base with Arenado or Bregman, and you're still going to add another piece. It's a great offseason for the Yankees. Could it have been better if they were able to retain Soto and still do some of these other things? Absolutely. But I still think they've done a nice job rebounding after losing Juan Soto. Hank, Rangers getting Burns. I heard through the grapevine. That's what I'm beginning to wonder. I remember we had another chat, subscriber here chatting with us the other day. I think his name was Itai, and he's been with us quite a while now. And he was saying he has quote-unquote sources. He didn't want to say who, but didn't reveal who it could be. But he's hearing that Burns, could be coming to Texas. Now, he says he's the same guy that predicted Seager to come here because he got the same news from the same person 2 or 3 days before that worked for the Rangers as well. Take it with a grain of salt. This is just coming from a subscriber who chats with us on this channel. Take it with a grain of salt. But I do agree that there's something funny with the pursuit of Burns right now. What I mean by that, I don't think he's going to Boston. We've seen them already move on. I think Toronto sees the writing on the wall. If he was willing to go there, I think he would have already signed. I don't think they're, hemming and hawing over $1 or $2 million. He would get the deal he wants in Toronto today if he wanted to go there. I think the Giants were the favorite all along here, but ultimately tells me that the money isn't quite there or that he has another destination in mind. That's what I mean by it being funny around Burns. I wonder if that mystery team could really pull this thing off. The Dodgers could very well be that mystery team. A number of other teams could ultimately be that team. As the longer he stays out there on the market, the more teams could open up their pocketbooks for him and take a chance. Remember, the Texas Rangers did this famously with Nathan Eovaldi. Eovaldi was just hanging around and hanging around and hanging around in free agency. Rangers went about and got their guys done early. They bring in DeGrom, etc. Yet they still were able to go to management and say, hey, the rest of the market really hadn't moved on Nathan Eovaldi. We have a really good rapport with him right now. Why don't we go ahead and try to bring him in and double down on pitching? And they did so. They were able to get him because they maintained contact with Eovaldi throughout that process and were able to swing it. And arguably, that's probably the single biggest move they made to help them win a World Series. And maybe something happens here with Burns again, possibly going to Texas or to another team that sees an opportunity they want to strike and try to bring him in. All right, Owen, welcome in, welcome in. Yeah, I heard 3 pretty good players. You'd rather have 3 pretty good players rather than 1 MVP. I wouldn't go quite that far, but I would say the wealth of talent they brought in around him, around that team, is getting better and is going to continue to get better. I'd still like to have Soto, don't get me wrong, but you know, I want to have my cake and eat it too. But if you can't have the cake, getting all these other pieces around there is certainly going to help them have a higher floor. And I think they're going to be a more well-rounded team once they get to October, to where they might be able to withstand some of the issues they had this past season. Remember, the bullpen was part of the reason why they really struggled in October to finally overcome the Dodgers. And I think they've addressed that. I think there's still more work to do, and I think they'll get it done. I love the trade they made with Jose Trevino as well. Love getting Cruz back. I think he could be a really nice high-leverage arm in the 6th, 7th inning roles for them. Let's go ahead and catch up on a few of these comments here. Lucas, I just saw an article, not really credible. Pete Alonso to San Francisco. Again, I'm sure they're trying to drum up business, but a lot of the teams that were pursuing first baseman, solved their long-term options there with bringing in Goldschmidt, bringing in Walker, etc. That they still, the teams that are still out there looking for a first baseman have a solution in a year or two. But Alonso's looking for a long-term deal. He ain't looking for 1 year plus an option. The Giants have had a bad history of doing that with Farhan Zaidi. I don't think they would do that for Pete Alonso. Cobra, how about Profar for low? Profar is a free agent, but I do like Profar quite a bit. He was one of my favorite prospects as a Ranger, and I know the Rangers, completely overblew his prospect status, but he was one of my favorite players when he was in Texas. I'd love to get him back and play in left field instead of Jock Peterson. He's looking for a 3-year deal, though. I'm not sure Texas would go that far. Lucas, there could be multiple mystery teams. I couldn't agree more with you. I do think there's more than one mystery team in here, possibly the Rangers, possibly the Dodgers, possibly some that we aren't even discussing that might pop in there. Remember, the Braves said they're a little tight financially. What if they popped in there and ultimately got Corbin Burns? That would be a real surprise, but I wouldn't put it as 0% chance. I'd probably put it at less than a 0.5% chance, don't get me wrong, but who knows who that mystery team could be. Let's see here. D-Rod, Astros have done okay this offseason. Who plays right field now that Tucker is gone? I don't think it's anybody on the roster right now. I think the Houston Astros are going to bring in somebody via free agency. If I were them, I'd be looking at Santander or Profar. Those would be the 2 guys I'd be trying to bring in if I were Dana Brown, the general manager of the Houston Astros. And Astros could get Santander or Teoscar for right field. Teoscar's another name, not a bad idea. Who do you think will get Ryan Helsley? Good question. I saw a couple of really good trade offers, one of them being from Texas. Helsley doesn't make a whole lot of money, and with the financial situation the Rangers are in, trying to stay beneath the tax, Mason Miller costs, $50 million as far as value that you'd have to give up to bring him in, and he's going to be on a vet min or a league minimum contract. Helsley's a little bit more money than that, but I think the Rangers would be a really good fit there. I wouldn't say they're the favorite, but if I had to guess a team for Helsley, maybe Detroit. I think they might be the odd man out of these free agent relievers, the top-end relievers. Maybe the Chicago Cubs, but if I had to guess, I would say Detroit right now. Because I think Kirby Yates, all things being equal, ends up back with the Texas Rangers on a contract very similar to what Blake Trinan just got, 2 years, $22 million. Rangers are also looking heavily at bringing back David Robertson, and they're also looking at a little bit, to a lesser degree, Tanner Scott as well. I'm sure the Rangers would love to have Ryan Presley. I don't see the Rangers being able to pry him out of Houston because, again, rivalry between the two teams. I just don't think it would happen. Mark, welcome in. Appreciate you joining us and subscribing. Thank you. Let's appreciate you liking the video as well. Just got home. What realistic thoughts about my O's pitching you've heard? Love this pod. Thank you, man. Appreciate that. If you guys like this pod or this channel anyway, just like Mark, make sure you guys hit that subscribe and like as well. But to update you on your Orioles, it sounds like they're going to be going the trade route more than anything else. Heard some rumors today about possibility of Flaherty going back there. He keeps having his name dropped every couple of days or so. I don't buy it as of yet. I think it just went so poorly the first time around. I don't see them revisiting it. But unless there's some other opportunity that falls apart, I think that's the only real possibility at that point for Flaherty. But for right now, I think they're focusing on the trade market. I don't think they have a prayer to bring back Burns. If they're looking in the free agent market, which I have heard to some extent, I've heard them connected to Sean Manaea. I'm not sure how warm they are on the idea of bringing him in either. I think they're looking at the trade market. They're looking at Dylan Cease and Luis Castillo. If I had looking at the preferences and the way this team is operated, the cost to bring in Cease, I think they may end up going that way. And I think Castillo would be a better fit. I don't think he was cost as much prospects because, again, he's being paid commensurate to what he's already worth on the field. So the value isn't going to be extraordinarily high because the Mariners are trying to offload that salary. Meanwhile, the Padres are trying to maximize the value that they can get for Cease, which is why I would prefer going after Castillo. But I've heard both names equally with the Baltimore Orioles. Welcome back, Holly. I would love Kirby Yates back. I couldn't agree more. He was great for the Texas Rangers. Do I think we'll get the same results from Kirby Yates? I don't, which does worry me to a certain extent. I wonder if they're going to bring back another guy experienced that can be a closer for them. Like a David Robertson, I think as having a stack like that really worked well for Texas because if they didn't have that, they opened the year with Jose Leclerc as their closer. That didn't work. He's a free agent right now as well. Spores is out until, July at this point. And I just think they need to have another plan in place besides just Yates. He had a great year. He was fantastic. But you weren't expecting that for him. And while the numbers looked really good for him, I don't think that's necessarily indicative of what he can build upon or what he can replicate, which tells me he's going to be a little bit under what he just did, which he was so great last year. You can still lose a little bit of performance there and still have a very good relief pitcher, a very good closer. But I think the Rangers are targeting Kirby Yates right now. If I had to choose between the two, I think Texas probably gets Yates. I think Robertson's value on the open market right now is going to lead him to get a very lucrative contract elsewhere. I think he's due for a little bit of a raise from what he just got from the Rangers, which might price the Rangers out. Cobra, O's have the prospects for Cease. They have the prospects for anybody right now. They do. But the question is, at a certain point, when do you start throwing away prospects and short-circuit your overall success as a franchise? That's the worry I would have if I'm the Orioles fan base there. Now, if I'm the Padres, I want to do business with the Orioles because they've shown the willingness to go after guys who are about to hit free agency and are still willing to pay a premium to do so. I think Baltimore would be a great trade partner for San Diego for their perspective. But if I'm Baltimore, I would prefer going after Luis Castillo. Holly, I've been hearing Robertson isn't going to be in a hurry to sign anywhere. Same thing. I think he's going to wait and see where where he falls in the pecking order. I think he's going to wait for Scott to sign. I think he's going to wait for Yates. Once those guys are off the board, I think then his name is going to pop up quite frequently. And I do think he's going to do really well in free agency. Alrighty. We got about 40 of you guys with us right now. Wanted to thank you guys for joining us over the past month anyway. Really had a lot of success with you guys ever since the winter meetings. A little bit before that when we started going a little stronger with our coverage, going every single weekday. Because of the response you guys have had to our channel, we're going to go ahead and keep doing this in perpetuity. Every single evening, we're going to update you on what's happening with MLB's Hot Stove season. Once we get to the regular season, we're going to keep this going. So we're going to kind of lean heavily into our baseball coverage because of the way you guys have responded. So thank you guys. You guys are the reason why we're going to do as much coverage as we're going to keep doing here. And I wanted to thank you for that. It's been a great privilege to be able to enjoy sports again with you guys in a way that's different than anybody else gets to anymore. You look at MLB Network, I've harped on this in the past, but there's nowhere on there that you can have this type of discourse with your fans, whether it's the Rangers fans or any other fan base out there, and just talk baseball. You don't want to be an echo chamber and just hear only from Rangers fans like you get on sports radio all the time from your local radio station. I get fan bases from all around the world in here. Lucas is chatting with us from Europe. We got some people from Canada, Venezuela, Belgium, Brussels, all over the place joining us and having baseball conversations at 11:30 at night on a Saturday night. Now, I know you guys are having a lot of fun and enjoying baseball, but on the other hand, this is a great community. This is us enjoying baseball and enjoying something together. So I wanted to thank you guys for joining us and making this so much fun to do. So hats off to all you guys. Thank you for liking and subscribing to the channel, following us over on X at UpsideSN, and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. I do see every single one of your likes when you do like it on Facebook. I get a notification on my phone every single time. Makes me smile. Mark, I know when I posted my video from earlier, I saw your like come through. Just makes me smile whenever you guys respond to our content. Really do appreciate the effort you guys give to us. So thank you guys very much. From Munich, all right. Let's go ahead and catch up on a few of these other comments here, and then we'll kind of wrap up for the evening. If you guys want to check out our earlier stream, it is on the channel. We also posted a short little video, just 15 seconds, updating you guys when Goldschmidt did sign. Every now and again, we'll do a short video just to keep you guys updated on some of the bigger headlines that we do see. But Jose Lito, welcome back. Do the Yankees have another trade or signing coming again, or do you think they are done for now? They certainly are not done. They're still going to look for a third baseman. They're still looking for a trade partner for Stroman, it seems like, to try to offload some salary to be able to, quote-unquote, afford Arenado or Bregman, whichever one they do bring in. And I still believe they're looking for an eighth-inning guy as well. If they move Stroman, then they'll be back in the market for another starting pitcher. Probably a very low-cost option there. Something in the, like, 1 year, $4 million that Griffin Canning got. I could see them going after in free agency. But it's going to be hard to find a taker for Stroman's contract, just like Seiyu Suzuki of the Cubs. Very hard for them to find a taker for that contract in its entirety. And the Cardinals have shown a willingness to retain salary for Arenado. They're looking to maximize the return as far as prospect value. They're not just trying to save money. So we'll see what they decide to do. This is going to be a rebuilding year for them. But the Yankees, I do believe, have both a signing and trade in them to come. Mark, thanks. I agree on Castillo. Cease a better pitcher, but less control. Again, I'm not sure if he's a better pitcher. Remember, 2.2 ERA in his one great season. Outside of that, his first season, outside of that, where he was under a 4 ERA, was this one. I'm not sure how good he is, because after that Cy Young year, he got blown up pretty good. And maybe it's just, a case of too many innings, but he's been pretty durable. I will say that for him. He's been very durable. If he has a great platform year, he could really, cash in this offseason, but I would still rather have Castillo because you have cost certainty, and I don't think it's going to cost quite as much to acquire him because I think the Padres are trying to maximize the value for Cease, whereas I think Castillo is already being paid commensurate to his value. It's not going to cost you as much, and the Mariners are trying to get out of their money. So it might be the better option for them, long-term and short-term, to bring in Castillo. He would be the one I would go for. Cobra, you're correct there. The Cardinals did decline Stroman for Arenado. I'm sure there would have been prospects attached to that as well. Cardinals have no need for a veteran pitcher on a one-year deal to come in anyway, and they're looking not necessarily to, to save money. They're just trying to, get the best return that they can for Arenado, and I think they're going to move him, to whichever team they ultimately can find as a taker. I mean, Arenado can still have final say as far as the trade outside of those 6 teams, but I think there's every belief in the world that the teams that are looking in on Arenado are going to be competitive teams. It's just a matter of if he views them as a contender to his liking that he would fit on. So we'll see where he goes. David, I think Arenado for Stroman will happen, but we may have to send him a prospect or 2. I would say probably 2 or 3, more than likely, David. But I do like the idea of Arenado going to the New York Yankees. We'll end on this last note here about Arenado and Bregman. To me, I've made this point before, but I really liked the idea of them bringing in Carlos Correa a few years ago. They decided to go in a different direction, bringing in Josh Donaldson. Kind of reminds me a lot of where they're at right now. They didn't want to go the long-term money on Correa, so they went for the shorter-term deal with a veteran with a big name that probably would get you a solid performance for a year or 2 at the hot corner. Does that sound familiar right now? A declining player coming over for a year or 2 in Arenado instead of going for the long-term option in Bregman. Sounds very, very similar to me. And at the time, Yankees fans were all up in arms about why they didn't go after Correa. Correa was the better option. We wish we had gotten Correa. Well, here you are with a chance to do the exact same thing, and yet you're still saying, I would rather bring in Arenado. And I'm not saying it about all Yankees fans in my chat, but I keep hearing over and over and over again how the Donaldson deal was so garbage for them. But look at where Arenado is right now. He's no longer the player he once was. I'm not saying he's Josh Donaldson levels of bad, but I am saying you're passing up on a real opportunity here, just like you did with Correa. I would rather go with the Bregman option. Improves their defense a little bit better. I think his defense is a little bit better than Arenado's at this point. And then, sure, you'd have the comfortability of having Goldschmidt, his former teammate, there if you did bring in Arenado. And it's a shorter-term deal, so you could invest that money elsewhere in a couple of years. But for me, I still go after Bregman. Better player. You were just in a World Series. You're trying to win. I get the hesitation about the qualifying offer, but get it done, my guy. I mean, we're talking about, the New York Yankees, probably one of the top 3 payrolls in baseball right now, or at least they should be on par with the Dodgers and with the Mets. And they're sitting there trying to play, hey, we're, woe is me, we're the poor team. We're not the big bad Yankees anymore. We are no longer the number 1 spending team in baseball. Well, yeah, baseball got better. Baseball improved. Teams got the ability to spend money at the level you used to be able to spend at. And now you have competition for those guys. You're going to lose some of those guys. And Yankees have tried to prepare their fan base for that by saying, we're poor, we can't afford it. Bunch of hogwash. I mean, they could afford it. It's just a matter of they didn't want to go to that number. They got outbid by Steve Cohen. Not a surprise. It can happen. Move on, tuck your tail between your legs, and move on and get other business done. They got Max Fried done. They get Williams done. They get Bellinger done. They tried for Tucker. They tried for Walker. They bring in Goldschmidt. They're still looking at third base. They're looking at another reliever. They're possibly moving on from Stroman. Very good offseason for the Yankees. They've been moving very quickly here. 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. They're not letting opportunities pass them by, which is why I give them kind of a win this offseason, even after losing their second best player in Juan Soto. They've just had a really good offseason. I think it's going to get even better depending on what they do at third base and in that bullpen, but by no means is it a finished product. Joshua, is Tennessee that bad, or was the home field advantage that big of a deal? Honestly, I didn't catch the Tennessee game. I'm not a huge college football guy. I will pay attention once we get down to the Final Four, but again, my pick is the Notre Dame Irish. I just think they're that good. I think they had that one bad game, but outside of that, one of the most dominating teams in college football I've seen this year, along with Oregon. Let's see here. Too bad Chris Bryant isn't available. That's a bad contract, my guy. That's an ugly one. Chris Bryant is available for disability. I like that one, Joshua. David, I think there's a difference. Donaldson was supposed to play a bigger role than Arenado would. I'm not sure that's the case. Arenado, I think, would be asked to play a very similar role with what Donaldson was being asked to do. Volpe was just about to come up anyway, was going to be a rookie that year, I believe. Or, I'm trying to remember, what were they doing at shortstop? Was that the year of Isaiah Kiner-Falefa? In either event, they didn't have a long-term solution at shortstop yet. Of course, they still had Torres there at second base, and first base. What did they do with that year? Was it Rizzo that they brought in that year, or was there somebody else? I can't remember. But in either event, the Yankees are still, by and large, in the same boat they were a few years ago. Judge still the face of that team. Donaldson was probably going to be seen as probably the third, fourth, or fifth bat on that team. Arenado in the third, fourth, or fifth bat on that team right now. Very similar situations for me from the outside looking at it. The Yankees, sure, the differences might be a little bit more unique. Arenado is probably a better glove at this point than Donaldson was. I'd say Arenado is probably a better player overall offensively than Josh Donaldson was at the time of the trade. And I think the deal for Arenado would probably work out better than it did for Donaldson. But I still think Bregman, the long-term solution for them at third base, should be going after Bregman. That's basically my argument, is that don't go for the short-term option that you're going to have, even if it works out, only works for a year or two. Sure, it saves you money. You can go out and spend it in the free agency after that. But I think Bregman would be the difference maker for them and possibly push them over the top in the American League, getting them back to the World Series. Do I think they'd be able to overtake the Mets, the Phillies, or the Dodgers if they get to the World Series? I think it'd be anybody's ball game at that point. I think they've done a really good job building up that pitching staff, and there's still more work to do. We'll see what they ultimately choose to get done. Joshua, qualifying offer is dumb. Why should teams willing to spend be penalized? I get your point there. It's not nearly the penalty that it used to be, but come on. We're talking about a competitive balance pick, essentially, in exchange for bringing in Bregman. If you're worried about losing a competitive balance pick for the future of your franchise, are you really a contender, is my question. You look at the year the Texas Rangers brought in Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, etc. The year they bring in Nathan Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom. They didn't give one iota about those draft picks. Why? They had a strategy when they got there. They still got basically 2 first-round talents with Kumar Rocker and Brock Porter in that draft when they brought in Eovaldi and DeGrom. It's all in how you prepare for your draft. So don't give me this qualifying offer stuff, being costly, a huge deterrent. Yes, you'd love to have the long-term asset. Don't get me wrong. Every team would love that. But at a certain point, are you playing for 5 years from now? Are you playing for this year? When you're in the New York Yankees and you just made it to the World Series, you're darn right you should be competing for the World Series again the next year. Why are we worried about the long-term future of a prospect who may never even make it above Double-A? Let's settle down on the qualifying offer being dumb. But I do think having a balance there for the small market teams who have no recourse when they lose those guys in free agency. Garrett Cole was never going to sign with Pittsburgh. You think he was going to sign a $300 million contract to stay with the Pittsburgh Pirates? You think the Pirates had that kind of money? The Yankees are in a completely different ballgame as far as their market. They can afford it because of the ownership group that they have and the market they play in. Pittsburgh's in a different situation. That's why baseball has the qualifying offer system to kind of keep it at least competitive to a certain degree. I think they overcorrected when they had it, your first round pick, your second round pick. I think they've got the compensation about right now. I would still say I wouldn't include the bonus pool money, though. I think that bonus pool money should not be touched among other teams. I think the only way that you should be willing to, trade bonus pool money is for bigger ticket items. You can't just, give it up because of a qualifying offer. And I think the nominal $250,000 you're giving up when you do the qualifying offer, it's not a big amount, but it's enough to where teams that do take a risk in free agency that may be willing to sign one of those qualifying offer guys, I don't think it should be a penalty to them. Now, like I just said with the qualifying offer, I don't think it matters too much in the long-term picture of things when you're trying to sign a guy like Bregman. I guess I could say the same thing about bonus pool money, but I'm just of the belief of when you're talking about the bonus pool money, that money should just be set aside kind of like a cap. That's something that shouldn't be traded among teams. I would just rather keep that the same. What I would be more open to is trading picks in the draft. Trading the number 1 overall pick in the draft would be something, other sports have really embraced. Baseball, because they try to keep parity and try to have those, teams in poor situations, not trade away that pick to try to get a short-term solution. I get it, but you got at a certain point, trust your teams to make the right decision and take that rule out of there and get more eyeballs on the draft and help build the sport. They've done a great job making the draft a lot more watchable than it ever has been. One of the best drafts I've ever seen was the one right before the All-Star game in Texas. That was fantastic. If you guys want to watch, really good presentation, how they used the stalls there as kind of a green room for the players, just the way they decked out the Fort Worth stockyards, that was great. And other locations are great for that as well. LA just did it out there when they hosted the All-Star game, or was it Seattle? I think it was Seattle. But things like that have helped move things along with the draft. I think allowing draft picks to be traded would be the next step for that. But as far as the qualifying offer argument goes, I get why it's in place, and I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think they've got it pretty close to about right for compensation if you do sign one of those qualifying offer guys. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up here. Got about 50 of you guys with us. Make sure you guys hit that like and subscribe. We'll be live with you guys again tomorrow afternoon. We'll probably do 2 lives tomorrow, so make sure you join us. Probably do one earlier in the morning, probably 11-ish, and then we'll do another one later on in the afternoon. But appreciate you guys joining us. All the support you guys give us really does help us out when you guys do like and comment on the video. If you guys ever have a question, if I'm not live, say after the video, you're like, oh my gosh, I thought of this great idea, this great trade. What do you think about this? Send it in the chat. I will see those comments. I really do look at those comments. I noticed that Mark wasn't able to catch our earlier live, but he sent me a comment. I sent him a like as well. And I do try to catch up and read those comments. So if you ever want to say hey, you can say hey on the chat. You can send us a message, however you want to do it. But if you want to just join us, hit that like and subscribe. Follow us on X at Upside Ascend and on Facebook, Upside Sports Network. Again, we'll be live tomorrow morning. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Y'all have a great one.